So let's talk about this new proposal from the Portland Housing Bureau, which came out at the direction of Chloe Eudaly. Now, what they're wanting to do is radically change the way that security deposit accounting is handled in some of the rules around security deposits. I'm not really sure why, because we already have state laws that govern security deposit accounting, which have seemed to work so far. However, here are some of the changes that they want to make. Number one, they want to limit the size of a deposit you can ask for a regular security deposit or for a pet deposit. Now, on the surface, that may not sound like a big problem, but what it does do is it prevents a lot of those second chance tenants who maybe don't have perfect applications, from being able to find a place. Because a lot of times what happens is landlords will look at an application and say, okay, well, I'll rent to you, but to offset this extra risk, I'm going to charge a larger deposit. Well, if you take that tool away from landlords, then all of a sudden, second chance residents are not going to have a place to live because those landlords are not going to accept that additional risk. So this is basically the city saying, we don't really care about your problems if you're a resident and you don't have perfect applications. So that's number one, a major problem with the proposal. The probably largest problem with the proposal has to do with how they want you to account for damages when a resident moves out. So one of the things that they've put in here, which is probably the biggest problem, is that if you cannot prove when something was purchased, meaning you don't have a receipt for it, carpets, paint, an appliance, then the consumable life of that item is going to be considered fulfilled, and you can't charge the tenant for that. So what that means is if you bought a home or you bought an apartment, it's got carpet in it, the city is basically saying that unless you have a receipt from that and you're able to get it from the seller, assuming the seller has it, that you can't charge the resident for that. You can imagine that most people, when they sell a house, don't have receipts for every item that they've purchased for that property. So essentially what this is going to do is force landlords to eat a lot of these expenses and pass through those expenses in the form of higher rents, which is really the opposite of what I think the city wants. The other items is that they're changing the way that you have to depreciate things. So right now you're not technically required to depreciate, carpet and paint. It is a best practice, but they want to change the way that you do it so that you're having to do it on a straight line basis. So for example, if something had a lifespan of 10 years, you would have to depreciate 10% per year. Now that's not typically how carpet and paint is depreciated by most landlords or property management companies, not only in the Portland area, but in Oregon and nationwide. Usually they say, well, after 18 months, we'll depreciate 10% because, items don't break down at the same rate. Now, the big issue is that they've also said how long and the lifespan of the items in your property, regardless of what the manufacturer says. So they've decided for you that your carpets really only have a lifespan of 7 years. So if you bought carpets that were brand new or you have a receipt of when they were purchased, they're saying the lifespan of those carpets is 7 years. They don't care about the quality of the carpets, has nothing to do with that. They're basically going to say after 7 years, they could be perfect at year 6 and you move someone in on year 7, get completely destroyed, and they're going to say, too bad, you can't charge them for that. So they've also said the wallpaper only has 7 years on it. And there are a lot of other problems. One of the items with carpets, they've said that you can only charge for the area of the carpet that's damaged and not take into account all of the carpet in the area. And in most cases, that sounds about fair. However, the major problem is what if the carpet that you need to replace is no longer being manufactured? Carpet companies change carpet all the time. And so if you've had carpets for 5 years and then you need to replace a specific section, you're not going to be able to go find that section every time. So what that means is either you're going to have a patchwork of carpet or you're going to have to replace all of the carpet, and then you can't charge the tenant for that, even though the reason and the catalyst behind you changing all that carpet is because some of that carpet was damaged. So as you can probably imagine, there's a lot of problems with this proposal, and it's not clear to me why the city feels like they need to address something when there are already state laws that govern security deposit accounting. If you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out. We're happy to talk to you.